Hi guys, Martin speaking. Welcome to this video. This is the next in the series of how to play 40k, and today we're going to look at how to deploy your army, how to choose your mission types, etc. So we'll run into I've got a table in front of me which we're going to zoom down to in just a moment, and we'll run into how to actually set that deployment up, and then we're going to go through in the next few videos how to actually play the game out, and then at the very end of it all, I'm going to get one of my buddies and we're going to play a game out using these videos. We'll take it step by step through a whole game, so that's going to be the long video, so watch out for that one, guys. So let's get on with it. Right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to set our table up, and I'm going to show you the table now whilst I'm talking, where you'll be able to see how a basic terrain setup is made. Now, when you're playing with one of your pals, you've got a few different options of how to set terrain up. You can roll for each quarter of your table, or each tile of your table if you like, and that will tell you how many pieces of terrain to set up. Or you can set it up randomly between the two of you. Generally speaking, what we normally do, me and my mates, is we'll set it up so it's relatively even, and then when you're choosing sides, nobody's getting too much of an advantage then, but it just adds a bit of interest. Set it up how you like. The rulebook suggests different ways to doing it, but don't labour too much on it, guys, is what I would suggest. Once you've set your terrain up, you need to know what mission you're going to play. Now, by all means, for your first few games, just play out and out, kill each other, kill it till it's dead. Total annihilation, let's go with that. And you can, by all means, run those kind of games, but they get pretty boring pretty quick. It's better to have some sort of purpose to the game other than just annihilation. So we look to the rule book for the types of missions. Now, there are two types of missions that you can do in 7th edition. There are the standard Eternal War missions, which are Crusade, Purge the Alien, the Scouring, Big Guns Never Tire, Emperor's Will, and the Relic. So you can play one of those, or you can play the new Maelstrom missions, which are using the tactical objective cards that I mentioned in one of the earlier videos. By all means, you don't have to have them, because as I said, they are available in the rulebook to roll through. Those are a much more complex type of game in the fact that you really have to think each turn about scoring as many points as you can, because it can run away very quickly. I would suggest, guys who are just getting into this as a brand new game, stick to the Eternal War missions until you're comfortable with the rules. The guys who are coming back to the game after a few years off, or you might have only just picked 7th up after 6th edition, then by all means try some of the Maelstrom missions out. I think they're absolutely fantastic. I play them quite a lot. So once you've decided which mission you're going to play, and if you can't make that choice, then just roll a d6. 1 to 3 it's Eternal War, 4 to 6 you're on the Maelstrom missions. More than happy to go with that. It's what I do quite often. Set your mission out. Now, if you're going with the Maelstrom missions, the rulebook actually suggests what deployment type you should go with. That doesn't mean you have to do it that way. But if you look on page 131 of the rulebook, it actually shows you the 3 different deployment types. And they are Dawn of War, which is straight across your opponent, where you stand at the long table edge and deploy along there. You then got Hammer and Anvil, where you deploy across the short table edges and you play lengthways across the table. And then you've also got Vanguard Strike, which is where you use the diagonals. Probably people's least favourite deployment type, but it spices the game up. So roll your d3 on that one. 1 to 2 Hammer and Dawn of War, 3 and 4 is Hammer and Anvil, 5 and 6 is Vanguard Strike. Right, so you've decided which way you're going to play the game now and which mission you're going to play, and depending on your mission will depend on what objectives you have. If you refer back to the what you will need video, if you bought the mysterious objective markers, then it's the time where you're going to decide to use them. Sometimes you'll have just 1 in each deployment, sometimes you'll have 6 numbered ones. If you're playing Maelstrom, then you will have 6 numbered objectives. At this point, you and your opponent roll the dice. This is before any sides are chosen, like deployment sides. You roll the dice. Whoever scores the highest dice roll places the first objective, and you put it randomly anywhere on the table within the guidelines to that mission's rules. Then your opponent puts one down, and you just alternate putting them down, making sure that they're at least 12 inches apart from each other, and they've got to be at least 6 inches off the table edge, so you can't put one right on the corner of the table. Think about where you're putting these guys when you put them down, because you might think, oh yeah, well, I'll put them there because I'm going to hold them. Your opponent might choose to be that side of the table, so try to balance it out quite neatly. After you've finished putting your objective markers down, you then need to roll to see whether the game's going to be night fighting or not. So roll a d6. On a roll of a 4+, night fighting is in effect on turn 1. You do not have to do this. If you're not bothered about night fighting and your opponent isn't bothered, don't make the roll at all. But if one of you wants it, you have to roll to see if it comes into effect. Right, so if night fighting is in effect in your game, you're probably going to want to know what night fighting does to the game. It's changed massively from 6th edition, where it was done on distance away from units. It's much simpler now. If night fighting is in effect, then all of your models on the table get the stealth special rule. The stealth special rule grants you a +1 cover save. So if your guys are stood completely in the open, in no terrain whatsoever, on a roll of a 6 up, they've got a cover save to suggest that it's a bit darker, so therefore it's harder to actually target your enemy. You can counteract this if your models have got night vision, which pretty much the whole Dark Eldar army have. There are certain Tau units that have it with black sun filters and etc. Then they can eliminate that save. That's all it does nowadays, is it gives you stealth, so it just adds that +1 to your cover save. So if you're already in ruins, which will give you a 4+ cover save, we'll get into cover saves later on in the rules, guys, you'd obviously modify, as we spoke in the last video, you'd modify that up to a 3+ cover save. Right, so next thing to do in the game, guys, is if you've got any psychers in your army, at this point you need to roll for your psychic powers. I'm not going to go into that in this video because there's a whole video going to be done for the psychic phase of the game, and I'll refer back to here for it, but you would now roll for your psychic powers. Straight after you've done that, you roll for warlord traits. Now, depending on which army you've gone, you have specific codex related warlord traits, which you can more than happily use them. Some characters, I play a lot of White Scars army, and if I take Khosrow Khan, I have to take, if he's my warlord, I have to take a specific warlord trait, so I don't get a choice in the matter. But with other armies, you do get your choice. You can either take it from the codex, or you can go to page 124 in your rulebook. Well, it's 124 and 125, and you can go between the personal, the command, and the strategic warlord traits. Well, now you've got tactical traits in there as well if you're playing Maelstrom missions. So have a look through those. I'm not going to list out what each of those are, but for it you decide which trait table you want to roll on, and you roll a d6, and whichever one you get, that's your warlord trait that your warlord has, as long as he's alive, or whatever the rules suggest against him. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point, guys, if you've got a battle forged army, which we're covering again in the whole video that's going to be there about how to build and choose your army, if you're running a battle forged army, you are allowed to re-roll your warlord trait once. So if you rolled on something that's absolutely useless to you, i.e. +1 to your reserve rolls, and you've got no reserves, then you re-roll it and hope that you don't get that number again. But the second one you have to stick with, you can't revert back to that first one. Right, so now we've decided all that business, we're going to decide which table edge you want to deploy from. So, as with everything, we're going to roll a dice. Whoever gets the highest number decides to choose. It's as simple as that, guys. Both roll, you and your opponent, roll a d6. Whoever scores the highest number, if they're the same number, then you re-roll again until they're different numbers. And you then look at the table, you look at where the objectives are, you know what kind of army you've got, you know what kind of army your opponent's got. And you think, well, I want to go over that side, I want to go over this side, and you decide how you're going to do that. From there, you roll another d6 each once you've chosen your table edge, and this one determines who goes first. Whoever wins the roll gets to deploy first and go first. You can offset that and make your opponent deploy first if you wish to, and go first, but it will depend on your army tactics and the way you want to play the game as to whether you do that or not. So we've now got objectives set out on the table, all our terrain set up, we've chosen our table sides, we've got our warlord traits, our psychers have got their psychic powers if there are any, and we know who's going first. You then deploy your army. Now you have a 12-inch deployment line for most missions. For most standard missions I'm talking there, which is your Dawn of War missions, you have 12 inches in. If you're on the Hammer and Anvil, you've actually got a 24-inch deployment zone. Follow what it says in the book there, guys, rather than me showing you how each one of them set up at this point. It's not difficult to figure out with those ones. Deploy your army wholly within there, other than any units which you want to hold back into reserve, which we're going to cover in a second. Anyone that's going to infiltrate, hold them back, but make sure you do deploy anybody that scouts, because the scout move comes in just a moment. So you deploy all your army, including your scouts, but minus your reserves and minus your infiltrating models. Your enemy then does the exact same, and he sets up to counter your deployment if you've deployed first, or you set up and counter his deployment. After that point, you then place your infiltrators on the table. Now, infiltrators are models that have that particular rule. They can be put anywhere, absolutely anywhere on the battlefield, so long as they are either 12 inches away from any enemy model, if they are out of line of sight. So if anyone anywhere on the table can see them, they've got to be at least 12 inches away. If they can't be seen, if they can be seen, they've got to be at least 18 inches away. So what we'll do is we'll just go to a quick shot, and I'll show you exactly how that's going to look. So here we've got a unit of Dark Angels that have been deployed in a building, and then just off there in the distance you can see a clump of Chaos Space Marines who we're going to infiltrate. Now, because the Dark Angels can obviously see through to them, we're going to have to move the full 18-inch distance away from them. So you mark your first guy at 18 inches, and then you can build the rest of the unit around from that model, as long as they're all behind that first point or on level with that first one. Now, had the walls been solid, or something was obstructing view and we didn't have line of sight, we'd be able to move them a further 6 inches forward and just deploy them 12 inches away. And that's as simple as it needs to be. Right guys, so now you've seen how infiltrate looks, we'll move to the next part. It's worth noting, by the way, if you've both got infiltrating units, you roll a d6 each, whoever scores the highest infiltrates first, and then you base that off in there as it would suggest in the book. You would now make any scout moves you've got. So if you've got models with scout, you move them forward. If it's a foot troop, then it can scout forward 6 inches. It still has to be at least 12 inches away from an enemy model. Can't get any closer than 12 inches. So if you've got bikes, i.e. my White Scar army, pretty much every bike that I have can scout forward. They scout 12 inches forward. So all of a sudden, I'm only 12 inches away from my opponent's deployment edge. I have to make sure that I stay that full 12 inches away. So if they've infiltrated, I can't get too close to them. But let's not get bogged down with that. That's the simple side of the rules. I also mentioned to you about having reserves. If you've got a flyer in your army, you have to start that in reserve. There might be other units that you've got that you don't want starting straight on the table. We'll get more into that in the tactic videos at the end of the How to Play series. But for the purposes of today, you'll have decided, oh no, we'll want to keep that back and he wants to come on afterwards. And by all means do that. You have to tell your opponent, this is my army, how I've deployed it. These units are in reserve. So this Storm Talon is in reserve, or those Scourges are in reserve, or those drop pods coming in from drop pod assault. I'm not going to get bogged down with all the special rules for every army. The codexes are going to explain them, and that's not what the series is about. And that pretty much ties up deployment, guys. The very final thing to do is for either you or your opponent, whoever is deployed second and is about to go second, gets the magical chance to seize the initiative. I can't tell you how crucial this dice roll is. You roll 1d6, or your opponent does. Whoever is going second currently rolls 1d6, and on the roll of a 6, unless there's a rule that has modified it, either for somebody you've got in your army or your warlord trait, on the roll of a 6 you seize the initiative, which means that you get to go first. Why is that so important? Let's say I've deployed my whole army with the intention of going first. I've deployed in a manner that I think I'm going to get that first turn off, and I'm going to be able to put an alpha strike, as it's known, into my enemy. I'm going to be able to really dish out some severe punishment in my first turn. If all of a sudden my opponent seizes the initiative and I'm not going first anymore, chances are I've left myself exposed. Now he's got the alpha strike and I'm very much out there ready to do it. Think about that when you're deploying your army. If you've got a very weak army from an armour point of view, i.e. Dark Eldar, then you might not want to be all gung-ho forward, because when you get seized against, it's a horrible feeling, guys. the same time, if you're the one doing the seizing and that 6 comes up, life's good. And it's as simple as that. And that's it, guys. So that finishes this video off, to be fair. So we've now got the table. Our armies are set out, ready to go. I'll show you some shots of how it's all going to look together, and you'll be able to see where I'm coming from. And then we're literally ready to get into the movement phase, which is stage 1 of how to play the game. So if we're going to deploy on a 12-inch deployment line, which will be for, say, a Dawn of War mission, then what you can see there is I'll put those dice out, and all I've done to do that is I've measured my 12 inches for my deployment from the table edge, pop the dice on the end of each one, and that then gives me my deployment zone. So anywhere behind that line of dice, I can place my models however I want to. So I'm going to grab a couple of tactical squads. First one's got a heavy weapon, so I want him to be in a building, and as the building is actually inside my deployment zone, I can put them on whatever level I want, as long as I've maintain coherency and they're all legally deployed. They don't need to take any tests or anything like that. And with the second unit that I'm going to put in, you wouldn't necessarily deploy things like this, but for visual purposes of the video, I'm putting them on a straight line right on the deployment edge, so they're as far forward as I can possibly get them as a unit. And that really is as simple as it is, to be fair. This is just 2 units. You probably have more than that normally, but it's an example to show you here. As always, guys, thanks for watching the video. If I've got any rules wrong, to those guys who are out there that know the rules, don't hate me for it. Just let me know in the comments. I don't profess to know every single rule perfectly, but just put comments in there in a constructive sort of manner. If you like the video, like it. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the share button as well. Let's get this thing big, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.